Continuing with chapter 7, we are now looking at section 7.2, which is basically devoted to these formulas, 4 formulas. We call them sum or difference formulas. So you can see there is a formula for expanding. Sine of x plus y means sum of two angles. Sine of difference of two angles, cosine of sum of two angles, and cosine of difference of two angles. Now we are not going into the proof of these formulas because you will not be asked to prove any of these formulas or verify. You will just have to use them if anything. So now you have to kind of memorize them. The way to memorize them, the best way is to write them over and over again, like 5 times daily, maybe for the next few days that are left for the exam, before the final exam. So the one thing to note is the pattern here. So if you notice the pattern, if we have sine, whether it's x plus y or x minus y, means sine of sum of two angles or sine of difference of two angles. When we expand it, the terms that we get on the right hand side are sine and cosine being multiplied. So first we have the term sine of x times cosine of y. So sine of the first angle times cosine of the second angle plus. So this is all important to note here, that when we have a plus sign in this left side, means we are looking at the sum of the angles. Then we have the right hand side is also sum of two expression or two terms, and those terms contain a sine and a cos, and then again a sine and a cos. But of course the sine of x in the first term, and then it will be sine of y in the second term, cosine of y in the first term, and cosine of x in the second term. When it comes to sine of x minus y, difference of two angles, note that the terms on the right hand side or the expression on the right hand side are exactly same as we had for the sum of the angle, sine of sum of the angles, two angles. The difference is now that we have a negative sign, since we have a difference. We are taking a difference of two angles, so we get a negative sign here. In the cosine term case, this is a little bit different. So when we have cosine of plus x plus y, means sum of two angles, cosine of sum of two angles, then on the right we have same functions being multiplied. So we have cosine x times cosine y, and then we have sine x times sine y. Also note that the sign in the middle, so if it's a addition here, it becomes a subtraction on the right hand side, and if you have a subtraction here, it becomes addition on the right hand side. The terms are the same. Now there is a formula for tangent of x plus y, and then there is one for tangent of x minus y, but we are not going to go into that formula because then you will have to memorize an extra formula. Now if a question asks us about tangent value, then what we will do is we find the sine of that angle and cosine of that angle and divide them. So we are using the property that tangent of theta is equal to sine of theta over cosine of theta. So that property. Okay, so how do we use them? Well, these can be used to evaluate the sine, cosine, and other trig functions at an angle which we have not seen on our unit circle, but it can be written as a sum or a difference of two angles on the unit circle, the ones that we have seen on the unit circle. So those specific ones which are in radian measure, which are multiple of either pi over 6 or pi over 4 or pi over 3 or pi over 2. And in degree measure, they are multiples of 30 or multiples of 45 or multiples of 60 or multiples of 90. So if we have sine of 15 degrees, we have to evaluate. So it says using addition or subtraction formula, find the to find the exact value of these numbers or these functions. So we have to find what is sine of 15 degrees equal to. Okay, so we have to find the exact value. Okay? And the exact value, which means we are not supposed to use an approximate value. So we are not supposed to use a calculator here. So how do we do this? Well, first thing is we try. By the way, before we start, remember that you should know the value of sine and cosine on for these angles 0, 30 degree, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120 degrees, 150 degrees, 1 plus 30 is 180 degrees, and so on. Or you should, if you, either you know them by heart, those values, sine and cosine of these angles, or you should be able to figure it out while doing the question. So we notice that we can write 15 degrees as 45 degrees minus 30 degrees. Okay. Now, we can also write it as 60 degrees minus 45 degrees. And there are a bunch of other ways we can write it. But no matter what, what form we use, we should get the same answer. So I'm going to use this first situation where I can write sine of 15 as sine of 45 minus 30. So now I will apply the difference formula for sine x minus y. So my x is 45, y is 30. So according to the formula, I'll get sine of 45 times cosine of 30 minus cosine of 45 into sine of 30. Now we know the values, so we can plug them in. So sine of 45 is square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over 2. And cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. The square root of 3 over 2 minus cosine of 45 is square root of 2 over 2 and sine of 30 is 1/2. Multiply it out, the top and the bottom. First term gives me square root of 6 over 4 minus square root of 2 over 4. So we can combine them because we can take a common denominator here. So on the top we get square root of 6 minus square root of 2. So this is your answer. Now note here, we saw here in this step square root of 2 times square root of 3. We were able to write it as square root of 6. So this is a product. But here in the answer we see this numerator. Remember that you cannot write it as 6 minus 2. This will be wrong. So we leave it as whatever we have. Okay, now if I try to do it the other way, try to take the other formula values. So, or you don't have to do both, but I will leave it for you guys actually to try this one and the next example. So I would like you to try sine of 15 degrees using the other difference, which is sine of 60 minus 45. So using, of course, this difference formula for the sine, and for part 2, now we have cosine of 75. So you notice that 75 you can get 75 by either doing 45 plus 30 or 30 plus 45, or we can get 75 as about 150 minus 45. No, that won't give you that. What about 120 minus 45? 120 minus 45. Does that give me? Yes, that gives you 75. So try it, the cosine of 75 using one of those values, and then I'll see you in the next video.